Kunja Bihari, Kunja Bihari, Jaya Ramarava, Kunja Bihari, Kunja Bihari, Gopi Jana Yarada Gopi Janavara Yavaradari Gopi Janavara Yavaradari Yashodanandana Raja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Raja Jana Yamuna Tira Brahmachari Yamuna Tira Gopi Janavala Bhagiraradari Yashodanandana Raja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Brahmachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupad Pari Jajapacharya Ashtotar Shata Shata Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ishkan Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pari Rajakacharya Ashtotar Shata Shri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Srila Satchidananda Bhaktivedanta Kaur Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhuma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunatha Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Das Raghunatha Sad Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Dev Ki Jai. Tulsi Dev Ki Jai. Anantakota Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Haranam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Pranath Raj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Ishkan Varma Guru Vrinda Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru Shri Guru. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayana Namaskritya Naram Jayava Narottamam Devam Saraswatam Vyasam Tito Jayam Hridayat Nasta Preshu Apatreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhakti Naistiki. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto Narayan, unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by the rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Okay, happy Sunday, everybody. It's February 18th, 2024. And we're reading Chapter 4, Creation of the Fourth Order. Chapter 21, Instructions by Maharaj Prithu. And we'll be doing verse 34. Okay. Okay. Asavihaneka guno gunotvara.
Asavihaneka guno gunotvara.
Pritag vidha dravya guna kriyoktivi.
Pritag vidha dravya.
Sampadyate ritashya linga namapir.
Sampadyate ritashya linga namapir.
Vishuddha vijnana gana sarupata.
Vishuddha vijnana gana sarupata.
Asavihaneka guno gunotvara.
Asavihaneka guno gunotvara.
Pritag vidha dravya guna kriyoktivi.
Pritag vidha dravya guna kriyoktivi.
Sampadyate ritashya lingam namavir.
Sampadyate ritashya lingam namavir.
Vishuddha vijnana gana svarupata.
Vishuddha vijnana gana svarupata.
Asavihaneka guno gunotvara.
Asavihaneka guno gunotvara.
Pritag vidha dravya guna kriyoktivi.
Pritag vidha dravya guna kriyoktivi.
Sampadyate ritashya linga namapir.
Sampadyate ritashya linga namapir.
Vishuddha vijnana gana svarupata.
Vishuddha vijnana gana svarupata.
Okay, please chant.
Asavihaneka guno gunotvara.
Asavihaneka guno gunotvara.
Pritag vidha dravya guna kriyoktivi.
Pritag vidha dravya guna kriyoktivi.
Sampadyate ritashya linga namapir.
Sampadyate ritashya linga namapir.
Vishuddha vijnana gana svarupata.
Vishuddha vijnana gana sarupata.
Asavihaneka guno gunotvara.
Asavihaneka guno gunotvara.
Pritag vidha dravya guna kriyoktivi.
Pritag vidha dravya guna kriyoktivi.
Sampadyate ritashya linga namavir.
Sampadyate ritashya linga namapir.
Vishuddha vijnana gana svarupata.
Vishuddha vijnana gana sarupata.
Sabihane kaguno guno dvara.
Asabhihane kaguno gunodvara.
Dravya guna kriyo.
Krita pira dravya guna priyoktivi.
Madhyatirtha sayalinga namavi.
Samadhyate rakshayate namavi.
Vijnana gana swarupata.
Vishuddha Vijnana Gana Sarupata.
Sabihane kaguno gunodhara.
Asabhihane kaguno gunodvara.
Dravya guna kriyo.
Krita vidha dravya guna priyoktivi.
Padate artha sayalinga namavi.
Sampadyate vasalinga namavi.
Jnana dhana swarupata.
Vishuddha Vijnana Gana Sarupata. Asabhihane kaguno gunodvara. Krita vidha dravya guna priyoktivi. Sampadyate vasalinga namavi. Vishara Vijnana Sarupata. All right, word for word. Asal, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Iha, in this material world. Aneka, various. Guna, qualities. Aguna, transcendental. Advaraha, yagya. Pritak vidha, varieties. Dravya, physical elements. Guna, ingredients. Kriya, performances. Uktibi, by chanting different mantras. Sampadyate, is worshipped. Artha, interest. Ashaya, purpose. Linga, form. Namabihi, name. Vishuddha, without contamination. Vijnana, science. Ganaha, concentrated. Swarupata, in his own form. Translation by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is transcendental and not contaminated by this material world. But although he is concentrated spirit soul without material variety, for the benefit of the conditioned soul, he nevertheless accepts different types of sacrifice performed with various material elements, rituals, and mantras, and offered to the demigods under different names according to the interests and purposes of the performers. Please repeat. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is transcendental and not contaminated by this material world. But although he is concentrated spirit soul without material variety, for the benefit of the conditioned soul, he nevertheless accepts different types of sacrifice performed with various material elements, rituals, and mantras, and offered to the demigods under different names according to the interest and purposes of the performers. Purport. For material prosperity, there are recommendations in the Vedas for various types of yajna, sacrifice. In Bhagavad Gita 3.10, it is confirmed that Lord Brahma created all living entities, including human beings and demigods, and advised them to perform yajna according to their material desires. Saha yajna prajapshrishva. These performances are called yajnas because their ultimate goal is to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. The purpose of performing yajnas is to get material benefit, but because the aim is to simultaneously satisfy the Supreme Lord, such yajnas have been recommended in the Vedas. Such performances are of course known as karma kanda, or material activities, and all material activities are certainly contaminated by the three modes of material nature. Generally, the karma kanda ritualistic ceremonies are performed in the mode of passion. Yet the conditioned souls, both human beings and demigods, are obliged to perform these yajnas because without them one cannot be happy at all. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments that these karmakanda ritualistic ceremonies, although contaminated, contain touches of devotional service, because whenever there is a performance of any yajna, Lord Vishnu is given a central position. This is very important because even a little endeavor to please the Lord is bhakti, and it is of great value. A tinge of bhakti purifies the material nature of the performances, which by devotional service gradually come to the transcendental position. Therefore, although such yajnas are superficially material activities, the results are transcendental. Such yajnas as Surya Yajna, Indra Yajna, and Chandra Yajna are performed in the names of the demigods, but these demigods are bodily parts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The demigods cannot accept sacrificial offerings for themselves, but they can accept them for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, just as a departmental tax collector of a government cannot collect taxes for his personal account, but can realize them for the government. Any yajna performed with this complete knowledge and understanding is described in Bhagavad Gita as Brahmarpanam, or a sacrifice offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Since no one but the Supreme Lord can enjoy the results of sacrifice, the Lord says that he is the actual enjoyer of all sacrifices. Bhoktaram yagatapasam sarvaloke maheshwaram. Sacrifices should be performed with this view in mind, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita. Brahmapanam brahmahavir brahmajau brahmanahutam brahmaiva tena gantavyam brahmakarma samadhina. A person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities, in which the consummation is absolute, and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature. The performer of sacrifices must always keep in view that the sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas are meant to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vishnu Aradhate Panda, Vishnu Purana 389. Any material or spiritual done for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord is understood to be an actual yajna, and by performing such yajnas, one gets liberation from material bondage. The direct method of getting liberation from material bondage is devotional service, comprising the 9 following methods: Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Bandhanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atma, Nivedanam. This 9-fold process is described in the verse as Vishuddha Vijnana Gan, or satisfying the Supreme Personality of Godhead directly by transcendental knowledge, concentrated on the form of the Supreme Lord Vishnu. This is the best method for satisfying the Supreme Lord. One who cannot take to this direct process, however, should take the indirect process of performing yajnas for the satisfaction of Vishnu, or yajna. Vishnu is therefore called Yagyapati, Shriyaha Patim Yagyapatim Jagapatim. The Supreme Personality of Godhead's deep scientific knowledge is concentrated to the supreme point. For example, medical science knows some things superficially, but doctors do not know exactly how things happen in the body. Lord Krishna, however, knows everything in detail. Therefore, his knowledge is Vijnana Jnana, because it does not have any of the defects of material science. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is Vishuddha Vijnana Jnana, concentrated transcendental knowledge. Therefore, even though he accepts karma kandiya materialistic yajnas, he always remains in a transcendental position. Therefore, the mention of Anika Guna refers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead's many transcendental qualities, where he is not affected by the material qualities. The different kinds of material paraphernalia or physical elements are also gradually transformed into spiritual understanding, because ultimately there is no difference between material and spiritual qualities, for everything emanates from the Supreme Spirit. This is realized by a gradual process of realization and purification. One vivid example of this is Dhruva Maharaj, who took to meditation in the forest to achieve material benefit, but ultimately became spiritually advanced and did not want any benediction for material profit. He was simply satisfied with the association of the Supreme Lord. Ashaya means determination. Generally, a conditioned soul has the determination for material profit. But when these desires for material profit are satisfied through performance of yajna, one gradually achieves the spiritual platform. Then his life becomes perfect. Srimad Bhagavatam 2.3.10 therefore recommends Akama sarvakamo va moksha kama udardi divrena bhakti yogena yajite purusham param. Everyone, whether akama, a devotee, sarvakama, a karmi, or moksha karma, a jnani or yogi, is encouraged to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead by the direct method of devotional service. In this way, one can get both material and spiritual profit simultaneously. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnana Jana Sulakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Daditi Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuktapara Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Rakanatam Tam Tam Sajivam Savadetam Savadutam Varajana Sahatam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Tamascha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dino Bando Jagapate Gopesha Gope Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhischa Kripa Sindhu Bheva Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so in this verse, Prithvi Maharaj, he's talking to his subjects, and he's telling them that the Supreme Lord accepts different kinds of sacrifice through the demigods for their various desires. And if we think about just our everyday life, not necessarily spiritual life, but like everyday materialistic life, we have to sacrifice if there's things that we want, right? You know, like if you want to make a lot of money, you have to sacrifice time with your family, right? Or time with your friends. If you want to become a doctor, you have to sacrifice, you know, your time and a big portion of your youth, right? To become a doctor. Or if you want to become an athlete, you have to sacrifice a lot of times your body. You get a lot of injuries sometimes being an athlete. And you have to sacrifice cake. I mean, that's really bad. Jamuna knows. So, and so these are different things that if you want to achieve those different things, you have to make some kind of sacrifice. But it is pious to come to the demigods for your desires. But it's kind of like a bribe. It's like asking for something we don't really have the karma for. And so we're kind of trying to bribe the demigods into giving us what we want. And there's sort of a problem with that. One, we're contaminated. We're contaminated jiva souls. So we have the 4 defects. Does anybody know what the 4 defects are? Or just one of them? Yeah. What's that?
Propensity to cheat.
Yeah, propensity to cheat. Imperfect senses. Make mistakes. All right, one more. Huh?
Call it their illusion.
Yeah, all right. Very good. So we're asking for these things, you know, and we have all those defects. So can we really trust that we know what's best for us? Because I know I sure as heck don't know what's best for me most of the time. And we see this kind of used as a plot line in so many different movies, television shows, and stories, like you know, the Disney version of Aladdin, or just Aladdin in general. How many people have seen that? Where, you know, they meet a genie. This Aladdin meets a genie, and the genie says, "I'll grant you 3 wishes." and so he wishes for various things, and they don't turn out the way that he hoped, right? Then there was a movie in the 60s and then later in the 90s called Bedazzled, same sort of thing. This person makes a deal with the devil to get certain, like I think it's like 3 wishes, and it doesn't work out the way they want it to, and this is because we don't know what's actually good for us, So there's some examples from the scripture. So I want to tell the story of King Chitraketu, just briefly. So he was a king and he had many wives, but he didn't have a son. And as we know, for most kings, they really want a son in order to pass on that role of being king. And so he wanted a son so badly, and he wasn't having one. And one day he meets this sage, Angira, I think his name was, and the sage gives him a boon to have a son. And so he has a son, and it's his first wife has a son. And he said, okay, but the son's going to be the cause of your greatest joy and your greatest lamentation. And he's just like, okay, sure. He's just happy to have a son. But what ends up happening is his other wives become very jealous of his son and his first wife because they don't have any sons, and they end up poisoning his son, and so this becomes a great lamentation. And so, he wanted that son so bad, but it didn't turn out the way he hoped, right? That son ended up causing great distress. The other story I wanted to tell was the story of Rikasora, right? And so Rikasora, this is a pretty. I remember hearing this story and thinking, "Wow, that's pretty gross." But Rikasora was trying to get the attention of Lord Shiva, and so he could get a boon. And so he built a big fire, and he was like cutting off pieces of his own flesh and putting them into the sacrificial fire. And Lord Shiva wasn't coming. And finally he was like, okay, I'm going to cut off my own head and offer this into the fire to Lord Shiva. And finally Lord Shiva said, wait a minute, okay, hey, I'm here. What is it? What do you want? And he said, I want to be able to touch someone's head, and whoever's head I touch, it just explodes into a bunch of pieces. And Lord Shiva was just kind of like, oh, wow. Geez. But he had promised him that he would give him whatever boon he wanted, so he gave him this boon. And so immediately, talk about biting the hand that feeds you, right? Immediately, Rikasora decides he wants to try it out on Lord Shiva. So he starts trying to touch Lord Shiva's head. And Lord Shiva's like trying to get away from him. And so he's just flying away, running away all over, trying to shake him. And it's not happening. So finally, Lord Shiva goes to Vishnu and says, please, will you help me? Please help me. This guy's trying to kill me. And so Lord Vishnu said, okay, yeah, I'll take care of this. Hold on. So Lord Vishnu takes on the form of a brahmachari, and sure enough, here comes Rikasora trying to kill Lord Shiva, and the brahmachari steps in front of him and says, "Oh," he said, "Don't you know that Lord Shiva, he's been mad. He's just he's lost it. His words don't mean anything. Ever since his father-in-law Daksha has insulted him. Thank you. He's just been mad. His words mean nothing. You can totally check this out. Just touch your own head. You'll see nothing's going to happen, and then you can just go ahead and kill this liar. He's just a liar." And what do you know, Rikasora? He's like, okay. So he touches his own head, and it explodes into a million pieces. So This, again, didn't end up the way that he wanted it to, right? He ended up killing himself instead of being able to use that boon in whatever nefarious way that he had planned. So, let's see here. So Bhagavad Gita 9:23 says, those who are devotees of other gods and who worship them with faith actually worship only me, O son of Kunti, but they do so in a wrong way. So also the demigods can only give what Krishna lets them, so they only have the power that Krishna gives them. So Bhagavad Gita 7:20 through 23 says, those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires surrender unto demigods and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their own natures. I am in everyone's heart as a super soul, and as soon as one desires to worship some demigod, I make his faith steady so that he can devote himself to that particular deity. Endowed with such a faith, he endeavors to worship a particular demigod and obtains his desires, but in actuality, these benefits are bestowed by me alone. Men of small intelligence worship the demigods, and their fruits are limited and temporary. Those who worship the demigods go to the planet of the demigods, but my devotees ultimately reach my supreme planet. So, Prabhupada, he says that the conditioned souls have to perform yajna or they can't be happy. Yes, he says that, look at the end of the first paragraph. Yeah, in the purport it says, generally, the karmakanda and ritualistic ceremonies are performed in the mode of passion, yet the conditioned souls, both human beings and demigods, are obliged to perform these yajnas because without them, one cannot be happy at all. So without some sacrifice, ultimately to Lord Vishnu, we cannot be happy at all. So I'm going to read a little bit of this purport from Bhagavad Gita 3:10, which was mentioned also in the purport. So, the purport says, the Lord created this material world to enable the conditioned souls to learn how to perform yajnas, sacrifices, for the satisfaction of Vishnu, so that while in this material world, they can live very comfortably without anxiety, and after finishing the present material body, they can enter into the kingdom of God. That is the whole program for the conditioned soul. By performance of yajna, the conditioned souls gradually become Krishna conscious and become godly in all respects. In the age of Kali, the Sankirtan yajna, the chanting of the names of God, is recommended by the Vedic scriptures. And this transcendental system was introduced by Lord Chaitanya for the deliverance of all men in this age. Sankirtan yajna and Krishna consciousness go well together. Lord Krishna in his devotional form as Lord Chaitanya is mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam as follows, with special reference to Sankirtan yajna. In this age of Kali, people who are endowed with sufficient intelligence will worship the Lord, who is accompanied by his associates by performance of Sankirtan yajna. Other yajnas prescribed in the Vedic literatures are not easy to perform in this age of Kali, but the Sankirtan yajna is easy and sublime for all purposes, as recommended in Bhagavad Gita. So, so that purport also brings up the fact that we really don't even know how to perform these other yajnas properly. But we can perform the Sankirtan yajna properly. And I was talking with Kirtaneshwara, I think, yesterday in the breakfast line about how, when I first started practicing Krishna consciousness, and I had any kind of problem, he would just tell me, well, just chant Hare Krishna. And I would just get kind of mad and be like, and grumble and then he was saying, or maybe someone else was saying that they said, what, that's going to solve all my problems. But as you practice it, you realize that, yeah, it does. And so it just might take you a little bit to realize that. And so it seems so simple, right? Let's just, so I just chant this mantra and then things are going to be better. Yes, that's true. And it's much easier than doing all these other sacrifices, making sure we have the exact right mantras and we have the exact right ingredients and that we're saying everything at the right time and the right place. And so why not go directly to the source, which is Krishna, and perform the Sankirtan Yoga, chant his holy name. And the thing about Krishna is that he will magnify even the smallest amount of devotional service and make it so big, and kind of minimize maybe the wrong things that you're doing, right? Whereas most of us tend to do the opposite, right? We'll magnify the little wrong that someone's doing and minimize the many nice things that someone's doing. And so Krishna does the opposite. And so that's well demonstrated in the story of the spider, chipmunk, squirrel. I've heard that it's a spider, I've heard it's a chipmunk, I've heard it's a squirrel. But when Lord Rama is building that bridge to get to Ravana, Hanuman is picking up these big giant rocks and building this bridge. And then there's this little spider, chipmunk, squirrel who is taking little pebbles or little grains of sand and helping to build the bridge. And Hanuman kind of laughs at him and is like, "Get out of the way! Like, what are you doing?" And Lord Rama says, "Wait a minute. He's doing the best he can." Like, and then he said, "Why do you think I'm building this bridge? You know, because I could just go there without building this bridge. I could kill Ravana without your help. I'm doing this to provide devotional service so that you can be purified." And so that spider, chipmunk, squirrel is also being purified just as much as Hanuman by picking up those big boulders. So just remember that, okay? And also, yeah, you want to go directly to the Lord for your desires, even though, because it's more pious to come to the Lord for your desires. Well, better yet, it's better to serve the Lord just because you love him, right? Because it's better, if you love somebody and they come to you and they say, "Oh, I really need this," you'd be like, "Okay, sure," and you would help them. But wouldn't it be better if they were just like, "Hey, I just miss you. I just want to hang out. Like, let's just hang out. Let's, play a game or something." That would be much better than your friend always coming to you saying, "Oh, I need new shoes," or "Oh, I'm hungry. Please help me." Or, it'd be much better if they just say, "Hey, I missed you. What's up? What are you doing? Let's hang out." And so we want to try to have that attitude towards Krishna too, ultimately. But if you're not there yet, it is more pious to come to Krishna for your desires than to go to the demigods. So also sometimes in demigod worship, people kind of forget that it is actually Vishnu is the receiver of all this. And so Prabhupada gave the example of a tax collector. That a tax collector doesn't collect tax and then keep it for himself. And I was looking at from the opposite perspective, but the same thing. Like, you're not going to tell the tax collector, "Oh yes, please just keep my money. Like, you don't have to give it to the government. Just keep it for yourself." And you also wouldn't follow the tax collector, into war, go to war for the tax collector because, he got in a fight with his neighbor or something like that, right? And that's sort of like worshiping the demigods and asking them for things while forgetting Vishnu. It's pretty preposterous. We need to remember Vishnu. So I wanted to show one good example of worshiping the demigods. So was when the gopis were worshiping goddess Katyayani to get Lord Krishna as their husband, and so they did this, and Lord Krishna satisfied their desire by one of my favorite stories. They were bathing in the river, and Lord Krishna came and he stole their clothes. And when the gopis realized this, they're like, "Hey, give us our clothes back." And he said, no. He said, I need you to, why don't you each just come one by one, and then I'll give your clothes back. And in that way he took on, and they did. And my favorite part of the story, though, is they said, look, we're going to tell your dad. And he said, well, go ahead. He can't do anything anyway. He's too old. And I just thought that's so funny, because I can just picture any young boy saying something like that. But in this way, the gopis came to him one by one, and Krishna was very pleased with them, and he gave them their clothes. And in this way, he took on the role of a husband for them, because in Vedic culture, only a husband was allowed to see a woman naked, and so that he satisfied their desire. But the gopis were worshiping goddess Katyayani in order to get that desire fulfilled. And so with that, I wanted to ask, what is an example in your life where you've sacrificed something? And this is one example where you sacrificed something either without Krishna, and like what was the result? Or you sacrificed something with Krishna, and what was the result of that? And so I can give an example of like, without Krishna. This isn't an example from my own life, but my mother told me she had a full ride to not a scholarship, but like her parents were going to pay for her to go to college, and she didn't go because she had a boyfriend. She stayed home because she wanted to be with that boyfriend, and she never went to college. And the result of that was later on she regretted that. Her and the boyfriend broke up like real quickly after that, and she still never went to college. And then she struggled her whole life. She's still struggling. I mean, she can never retire because she never managed to get a stable career, and so that was one sacrifice that she made that didn't really work out the way she hoped. She didn't end up with the man, and she sacrificed her education. And then an example of sacrificing something with Krishna would be, I sacrificed, sleeping in to come to Mangalarti every day. And what is the result of that is, honestly, like, I'm happier than I've ever been. It's so joyful to be with the devotees and practice Krishna consciousness. And when I see people that are not practicing Krishna consciousness, and I just see how miserable they are and how sad they are. Not all the time do they know that, but or the nonsense that they're just doing every day. And I know that's just getting them more entangled in the material world. It's just so relieving and so happy to realize that I'm no longer doing that, and I'm no longer in that position. And okay, so now does anyone have one? Yeah, Lavanga.
Yeah. Funny you mentioned that story, because right when my mom met my stepfather, she was on her way to go to Florida to get her master's degree because she wanted to go to law school, and my father told her, "Oh, well, just stay here and marry me, and you can go back later." And that never happened, and she was always so mad about that because the marriage didn't end up working out. So it's like, whenever you sacrifice something without Krishna, there's always some kind of like regret there. But sacrificing something for Krishna, it always helps you in the long run. Like, once upon a time, I think I was about to leave my family and move out, and my aunt and my sister, we went out like partying, and there was this picture of us taken at this bar that kind of circulated around for years, sitting at the table. And then I remember one year after I met the devotees, I was going home to see my family for Thanksgiving, and my sister tagged me on Facebook with a picture of, let's see if we can recreate this picture, from years ago. And And, I was just like, oh my God, like I don't want to go like back to that place. Like, what did I ever see in that restaurant? It was a place called Coyote Ugly. So if you ever saw the movie, you know what I'm talking about. And so anyway, I luckily, like I didn't go out with them. And then, even just like spiritually, I didn't have the guilt of like, having gone back in that activity. But also even just materially, it helped me because that same aunt just had a stroke because she like kept up with that lifestyle of drinking, smoking. So
Yeah. Very good. Yeah. Anyone else? Uncle S. Prabhu.
Okay, so continuing the college thing. So I went to college in the 60s because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know, and the Vietnam War was on, and if you weren't in college, you went to Vietnam, basically. But I was miserable. I had no reason to be there, and I was so disappointed with it. Now, fast forward 40 years later, and I was serving in Hawaii at Hawaii ISKCON. And I never graduated college in the 60s. But then I had a reason to go back to college for devotional service. And it was intense, going to college, practicing sadhana, and doing full-time sankirtan. It was insane. But I did it. I got all A's, and I got terrible grades before. And it was quite a sense of achievement. And it was for teaching English as a second language. So I never actually used it like I intended to, but I still do use it to this day, especially when I go to Mayapur. I coach ESL people in English. So do it for Krishna, and it's better.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? Jamuna? Oh, you.
Yeah. Since you shared your story about Krishna and sacrifice, sometimes now when I work so hard, my workplace or here Saturday, all day, then morning time, oh my God, I can't wake up. My body is so painful. Then still I push myself, I want to be with Krishna. Then I wake up and take a bath and I come to my temple and see Krishna and Darshanarati. Then my pain is gone. I feel like, wow, this is a happiness for sacrificing myself and see to Krishna is very happiness.
Yeah.
And I'm enjoying for that, sacrificing and enjoying together. Thank you.
Yeah. So you get up anyway, and then your pain is gone. That's wonderful. Yeah. All right. Did anyone else have one they wanted to share? Jamuna?
I'm not as against Swami. This is how sacrificing without Krishna. Came to the material world thinking I'd enjoy. How do I regret that now?
What was it?
I came to the material world thinking I'd be enjoying. I sacrificed the spiritual world. How I regret that now. So
That's very true. I think we all regret that. All right. So I wanted to end with this verse from Bhagavad Gita 9:27. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, whatever austerities you perform, do that, O son of Kunti, as an offering to me. All right. So is there any just general comments or questions? Yeah, Lavanga.
I got that extra time to think about this verse because we were talking about it during our shift last night.
Yeah.
But the purport where it mentions that without yajna, one cannot live, without anxiety in this life. And in this modern day Kali Yuga, actually anxiety is a big problem. I know so many people that are on anti-anxiety medication and stuff like that. So really what it kind of implies is that even though we're in the material world, we're not actually meant to live in anxiety. The Krishna's, of course, nothing ever goes perfect here. The Krishna set up a system, ideally, where humans can kind of live in this material world, purify themselves, and then go back to Godhead. So it really just shows, like, with the increase in anxiety that things are going on, that the Yuga Dharma is not really being performed by the public. But we notice that whenever it's done properly, everybody's very happy. Just like during a 12-hour kirtan or something.
Yeah.
Nobody leaves that in anxiety or frustrated. Everybody's happy. So that's how we're meant to live as human beings.
Yeah, and I for many years suffered from anxiety. I was a lifelong nail biter, and that was always a good indication of my anxiety. And for the first time in my life since practicing Krishna consciousness, I actually have to cut my nails, and it's because my anxiety it's not there anymore, or if it is, it's something a little bit more transcendental, like anxiety, like, oh no, am I gonna be able to finish dressing the deities in time for darshanarti,
Anxiety is on a whole other level.
Yeah. All right, Kirtaneshwar, doing with us.
You were talking about, quality chanting. Somebody was saying if you chant, your day goes better. And if we were just talking about that yesterday, me and Lavanga, that chanting is such a powerful, if you do chanting right in the morning, it's so powerful. Mm-hmm. Your whole day becomes auspicious and blessed by Krishna's mercy. And everything goes better just by chanting Hare Krishna. Even materially, things go better.
It's true. I find when I am able to chant my rounds early in the morning instead of later in the afternoon, the whole day is so much better than if I am doing it in the later afternoon. It becomes more difficult to do, and the day just doesn't have that same magic, So, all right, we'll end there. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.